everyone, welcome to week 3's tutorial session. Today we're going to go into looking more at the entity component system. So go to aframe.io and go to get started and remix the starter example on glitch, and that will open up to your glitch account with a boilerplate loaded here. And we've already been working with entities and components. So the primitives are components, a box, a sphere, and the things that we do to change the entities are called components. So position is a component, rotation is a component, color is a component. A-frame has already wrapped these primitives for us, but we could also write it out by adding an entity, giving it a geometry component, geometry, primitive as box, give it material, color, red, position it at -1, 1, and -1. And then close out the tag. And there's our box. And we've given it a geometry and a material. And this is useful if we wanted to have a placeholder for something, and then later we might want to just change the primitive and have it be a sphere or a cone. So we could do all of the things that we wanted to do and change this primitive geometry component to change our entity. I'm going to put it back to box. The other component that we've started to work with is the material component. And this is something that has a lot of features in it. We worked with textures already, and we looked at metalness. If you go into the A-frame documentation, and you scroll down here to the components, we can see some of the components that are already built in with the A-frame framework. So we have geometry, which we just used, light we've used, material we've used, and we can go there and it will tell us more information about the material component. And here are the properties that we can add in that we don't necessarily have in our boilerplate. But here's one for opacity. So we could change it. By default, it's 1, which means it's 100% and will be opaque. But if I add in here opacity at 0.5, it's going to make it transparent at 50%. So now I have a transparent cube that I can look through. And there's a lot of different things that you can do with the material component. So here are all the things that you can add. We used repeat last time with our texture, and there's things that you can do to change the way that it will appear. There's a couple of other things that we can do that are interesting and will give us something similar to a texture, and that's called a normal map. So if we go to search for a normal image, I'm going to look up normal map rocks. Normal maps often look like this. They're purple and blue and kind of this neon colors, and I'm going to save this image as normal map on my desktop. And that gives instructions to the platform to add a, I'm going to put this back to 1, so I'll just erase that. And I'm going to write normal map. Normal map. I have to put in my assets still. So I have to create an assets tag, assets, and go to my assets, and I will upload an asset. And there it is. And I will copy. And this is another way to add a texture to an object that has some dimensionality to it. So let me add this image, ID equals normal map, and the source equals the link that I just copied. And now you can see this texture is applied as a surface only to my cube here. So it gives it a kind of rocky look. I'm going to also add in the normal scale, and that changes the depth of the way the normal map appears. So I can add a normal scale and see what happens if I do 4 and 4. It increases the amount of shadows in my texture. I'm going to change this color because the red is a bit bright. So let's go to HTML codes, HTML color codes. I want it to be a little bit more rocky colored. So maybe this color. I'll copy this. Let's put it back a bit. And I will scale it a little bit bigger. Scale, I'll do 2, 1. Stretch it out a bit. So there. So now I have this kind of rocky surface on the box, and it's starting to look a little bit more like it has some depth and a little bit more realistic. I can also increase the repeat of the normal texture. So normal texture repeat by default is 1 by 1. I'm going to change that to, let's try, oops, normal texture repeat. Let's do 4 and 4 also. So that's starting to look, maybe that's a little bit too much, but I can play around with that and get it to look like the texture that I want. Let's say I'm trying to make it look like a rock wall. I can play with the normal map and make it look more realistic. And then as I change the color, it will just map on that, onto that normal map and give me depth as I increase the scale. Oops, here it is. Let's try this color, a little bit more gray. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to move this blue box over to 0. There we go. I'm also going to add in a texture to my plane and make that bigger. So where's my plane? Here's my plane. And let's scale it 20, 20, 20, or 20 and 20. So there, now I have a big plane stretching out so it looks like ground. And I'm gonna add a grass texture to that. If you go to Canvas, it's in our, on the homepage here, there is a course resources and links. And I have a link to course project resources document. If you click on that, there's a lot of links to different things that you can use in this course. And if you scroll down in this yellow section, there's a section called texture libraries. And the texture libraries have 2D textures that are free to use, and they have a lot of different kinds of things that have surfaces that are useful to use as textures for your projects. So if you go to grass, I want to get some grass. I'm going to grab this seamless image and I will download that. Oh no. Okay, I already downloaded it. That's why it won't let me do it again. I guess you can only download a few a day. So that's good to note. Let me see where it is. I will upload it into my assets. Here it is. So I have this seamless grass texture, and I'm going to apply it to my plane. Hello, dog. Okay, I'm going to make it go away. Still uploading. Okay, so here's my grass, and I will copy this and bring it into my assets by typing, let's close that. I'm going to type image ID equals grass, and the source equals the link I just copied. And then on my plane, I'm going to add the material equals I'll take away this color. Now I have a grass material, but the grass looks way too big for the scale of what I'm doing. So I want to scale that down and repeat it. So I'm going to go back to my material and add repeat. And I'm going to do 6 and 6. That's in the X and Y. And see how that looks. That looks better. I think I'm going to add a little bit more to repeat. Let's do maybe 10 and 10. Looking good. I could keep increasing that repeat to make it smaller so that it looks, if I want it to look even more, I think I hit a 20 scale on that. Scale it. There, I like that. I think that looks pretty good. And because I got that seamless texture from the texture library, there's no seams in the tiling. So it's tiling it 20 times to the left and 20 times to the right. But you can't see that. It just looks like a seamless piece of grass, even as I increase that. So definitely look at those texture libraries when you're grabbing textures, because that can help with things like getting rid of seams. And they're specifically meant to be used as textures. In addition to the material component, which we'll continue to use, there's a lot of other components that A-Frame has built in. And one of them that will be really useful to use is the animation component. So here we have an example of a box that is animating the position property. So let's add that into our scene. I'm just going to paste it and look next to the code. Okay, so this is now going from the position which is -1, 1.6, and -5, and then animating the property position to 1, 8, and -10. So that's why it's going from over here up and back, because we're going from -1 to 1, so it's moving over a spot. It's going from 1.6 to 8, so it's going up, and it's also going back at the same time. If I wanted to do that with the box that I just made, I could add in my own animation as a component. And sometimes I like to go down to the next line when I write the animation component. So I would write animation equals property position. And I'm going to go from where it is, which is -2, 1, -3. I'm just going to have it move on the x-axis. So I'm going to go to let's go to 4 and 1 and 3. And I'll make the duration 10,000, and those are milliseconds. So the duration of the other one is 2,000, and that translates to 2 seconds. So 10,000 milliseconds is 10 seconds. And I'm going to do their easing as linear and loop true. Okay, let's see what that did. Ooh. So now the box is moving towards us. Let's see. Oh, because I went from -2, 1, 2, 3. If I do -3 and look next to the code, it moves just across the x-axis. And it's moving slower than the other one because I gave it a duration of 10 seconds. So the animation property gives us a few different things that we can animate, and we can animate other components. So it gives us example here of a sphere that is rotating. So let's see and copy that into our project. Okay, so the sphere is rotating around the center. Let's put it up a little bit higher. Let's put it at 2. There, so now we have a rotating sphere and a moving brick rock wall and a square that is animating back in space. So if you look through the animation component, you can see the different kinds of things. So from and to is position. There's a delay that you can wait for the animation to begin. The direction, the duration, the loop. You can play with all of these things and create a lot of different animations with just animating some basic things like rotation and position, and you can also animate the color. So look through the animation documentation and try out some of the different things that you can do. It gets a little bit more tricky when you animate with the material, so be careful with that. Don't get too bogged down with it yet. Just try out some of the basic animations so you understand how the animation component works.